late because of the previous meetings. Mitch, do you want to look at this? It's got the present and absent on it.
In my head.
Yeah. If anybody comes in, you can. So since he's got the roll call, we'll go on to the approval of the minutes. You can get who's present and absent off of that, Mitch, if that's okay. Everybody's had the opportunity to look over the minutes and check them out. Is there any corrections or additions that need to be made? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the minutes for the January 9th meeting? Motion by Ms. Kingsling to approve. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Harper. Any discussion? Anybody think of anything?
Mr. Kirk?
Yes, sir.
I would like to let the secretary know that I greatly appreciate the details of what he did with the minutes, and hope that continues.
Chairman recognizes the awesomeness of the secretary. Hey, it is important. Yeah. We obviously conned the right person into taking that job. That's right. All in favor of approving last month's minutes, please say aye. Any disapprove, please say no. Okay. Does anybody have any changes to the agenda or any additions before we approve tonight's agenda? All right, hearing no new items or any changes. Do I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda? Motion by Mr. Noller. Do I have a second? Second by Mitch. All in favor of approving tonight's agenda, please say aye. Any on the counter sign, please say no. It is unanimous. Our agenda is approved. First on our agenda, we have some new business items. First is a rezoning. First item is a rezone request by Miss Marilyn Clarity from A1 to R1/A1 on Highway 10 of 5.01 acres. And she wants to separate 2 acres off and add the remainder to the adjacent parcel that they own. Is anyone here to speak for Ms. Clarity? No one here representing the Clarities? Is that you, Jim?
No, it is not, but I am familiar with it and I've been contacted, but I was expecting them to be here.
Well, typically, if they don't show up, we just put it off.
She's had surgery, I think.
She's had back surgery.
Yeah.
I have not been notified of that. I will leave that at your discretion as to whether I need to represent. I can explain what she's trying to do or.
Well, I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but I think we should do what we normally do.
That's just fine.
So we will defer that, and hopefully somebody can be here for the March meeting.
Yes.
Okay. Do I have a motion to defer the rezoning request by Ms. Clarity until the March meeting? Mr. Thomas?
Someone here to represent her. I'll make a motion that we defer this to the next meeting.
I have a motion to defer Ms. Clarity's rezone request until our March meeting. Second by Mr. Noller. All in favor, please say aye. Any against, please say no. It does pass unanimously. Next is a rezone request by William Ferguson. I don't know who William is. I know Bill. By Mr. Bill Ferguson from A1 to R1 on 665 Hawkins Branch Road of 5.01 acres to match zoning of adjacent property in the 4th Civil District. Mr. Ferguson, would you come to the podium, please? Just tell us, Bill, what you'd like to do.
Just briefly, I have a parcel, and both these sit right across the street from where I live. And one's a 2.8 acres. And then there's a 5-acre lot on the side of it. And the one is the 2.8 acres has already been rezoned residential. I'm just like to add this 5.01 to it.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Ferguson?
No.
Will be R1. Not be more than.
So you're running from him to.
Yeah, but there is, it's just the view edit.
Any other questions for Mr. Ferguson? Okay. Keelan?
Right.
Let me tell, Justin, you do have your staff notes right after each one if you want to follow along. All right, Keelan.
All right, I'll just run through it really quick. So this is a request for the property at 665 Hawkins Branch Road. It is approximately 5.01 acres. They are requesting a rezoning from A1 agricultural and forestry to R1 residential. The property is currently used for a single family home and accessory structures. The surrounding properties are zoned A1 agricultural forestry. The property is not within the Hartsville-Trousdale Water and Sewer Utility District, but does have access to a 6-inch water line and does not have access to public sewer. Hawkins Branch Road is identified as Collector Street for the major thoroughfare plan, and the front of the property is located within the flood zone A. So I've included in your notes the district description for the A1 agricultural forestry and R1 residential. We're all, I'm sure, very familiar with the R1 residential. It includes detached single family and duplex dwellings and essential circumstances. There are a number of bulk standards. In this situation with public water, but without public wastewater, the minimum lot size requirement is an acre for single family and 17,000 square feet for a duplex. The proposed area to be rezoned is roughly 5.01 acres. This would allow for maximum density of 5 single family lots or 12 duplex lots. However, due to the shape of the lot, further development would require the construction of a street, which would greatly reduce the possible density.
Anybody have any questions for Keelan? Sam?
I don't have much to add further than what Keelan has already put forward on that. The lot next door is R1. We fixed it a year or two ago. Because there's 2 houses on one lot, and the only way to fix that and get it divided was to rezone it to R1 and to separate that lot. It still caused issues, but it made the zoning appropriate for those two. So, but there is an R1 lot right next to it.
Okay.
I stand corrected.
So as we all know, just as a reminder, this body has 3 options on a rezoning request. We can send it to the county commission with a favorable recommendation. We can send it to the county commission with a non-favorable recommendation, or we can just send it to the county commission. Only the county commission can rezone property. Does anybody have any questions for Sam or Keelan? Discussion? Motions? Go ahead, Dave.
So I keep hearing this talk in the community about how we're an agricultural community. And we keep doing these rezonings, farm and lots, big and small, from A1 to R1. At what point do we quit being an agricultural community and start being a residential and commercial community? Just from a planning standpoint.
Well, historically, Trousdale County is a rural agriculture community. In the 70 years I've been here, for the first 50 or maybe even 55 years, pretty much stayed that way. But over the last 10 to 15 years, I think we would all see a lot of change in the county. Began many, many years ago when TVA stole a bunch of land out there and took it. But as you know, I have some problems with that. But overall, we have had the, rural agricultural, but as people have moved in and have found out the beauty and the and affordability of land. Let's face it, that's people come because of affordability and things like that. And I don't know that we're going to be able to remain a agricultural area. You know, I know Rhonda and her family, they farm some, and Thomas farms, and David has a couple of farms, and Mitch is, I know his in-laws do some farming and some stuff, but it's those type of family farms are the ones that's going to wind up being, you know, staying. And in my opinion, let's face it, that when the family, as it passes on down, I mean, my family has a 100 and something acre farm, and I don't ever plan on it going anywhere, but my son doesn't live here. Him and his cousins are going to inherit it. They may get on that phone right quick and call Carmen Real Estate and have that taken care of when it passes to them. That's their prerogative. So I don't think you can do much about that. I think what we can do is just do our best to manage the growth in the county to where it's sustainable and to where it doesn't just, where there's a good mix between those of us that are still agricultural leaning and those of us that are more residential leaning, if that makes sense. That's just my opinion. Others?
Agree.
Any other discussion? Go ahead, Dave.
I just thought the question needed to be asked as we're doing more and more of these rezonings, for us to consider at what point it doesn't become a planning issue that we need to discuss, is how much are we going to start, what percentage of land in Trousdale County are we going to try to keep agricultural for the agricultural field, and how much do we let just send favorable approvals for R1s?
You know, really what you're talking about is like a 10 to 20 or longer year plan that would designate that type of stuff in those type of areas. And as your committee on the county commission continues to go about bringing the two zoning policies for the county and the city together, once we get that accomplished and get it through the county court and everybody's on board with it, then I think a look at that type of plan is next on the drawing boards. But I think we have to get our zonings together and get them right. And if we don't, they'll still just be haphazard here and there moving forward. Anybody else want to respond to David's question? Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to send this to the commission with a favorable approval.
Okay.
I say that.
Okay, I have a motion to send this rezone request to the county commission with a favorable recommendations. Mr. Swafford beat you there, Mr. Noller. He seconded it. Any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed, please say no. It does pass unanimously.
Yeah, I do want to say a little sidebar that there's a farm sitting right next door. There's like Nancy Ferguson owned it. It's been in the family since 1826. And it's gonna be about.
Well, that's what I think. You know, mine's been in our family since 1895, but I don't know about my son and my nephews. I was born in that house.
Yes,
So I'm glad. All right, moving on. A rezone request by Miss Elizabeth Sutherland from A1 to R1 on 185 Laddie Reach Road of 3.95 acres. She would like to separate an acre in order to build a house, and this is located in the 1st Civil District. Penny, you gonna talk or you gonna put Kurt up here? Yeah.
Ben put me here because she has a class tonight, so. taking them.
Just tell us in your own words what you want to do.
Okay, well, Beth, is moving into this house right now. She acquired a property. And, because I'm getting older, my husband's getting older, we want to move down there. My son also lives next door in a house that he just bought. And we would like to move down there with them. And we have an 80-acre farm across the street that I could take some acres off to do, but I'd like not to do that. I would like to keep that the way it is and build a house there, where she'll be able to just ride a gator or something down there and take care of himself.
Hopefully daddy first. Hopefully. For anybody that's not familiar with this is out on Laddie Reese Road. It's Charles's older home where Bud's been living for several years. Bud has purchased the house right beside there. Beth has acquired the house that Bud lived in. And there's some really nice land. And you said it's about 3.95 acres.
That's the whole property, yes.
Okay. And she would like to cut off, what'd you say? I go back an acre.
Acre.
And in order to build a house right there with her children on down the road from her there. Anything else? Restate it correctly.
No, you're doing a good job. Keep talking. I'm used to that. You talk.
I know. Questions for Ms. Sutherland? No questions. All right. Keela?
Right, so I'll just really quick run through it. So once again, this is for 185 Laddie Reese Road. It is a parcel of about 3.95 acres. They're requesting rezoning from A1 agricultural forestry to R1 residential. The property is currently used for a single family home. The proposed the surrounding properties are zoned A1, R1 and R2 residential. This property is not within the Hartsville-Trousdale Water and Sewer Utility District, but an 8-inch and a 4-inch water line are located along Laddie Reese Road. It does not have access to public sewer. Laddie Reese Road is considered a collector street for the major thoroughfare plan. So I've included the A1 district description as well as the R1. Exactly as we just went through, uses for R1 are detached single family and duplex. As we've already stated, that the intent is to divide off a 1-acre parcel with public water and without public wastewater, as this property has 1 acre is the minimum lot size requirement. So that would be fine. The proposed area to be rezoned is roughly 3.95 acres. This would allow for maximum density of 3 single family lots or 10 duplex lots.
Any questions for Keela? Okay, Sam?
On the left side of this map, there is a whole string of A1 properties going down Laddie Reese Road. Those A1 properties were done a long time ago. They're actually 1-acre properties. So rezoning this R1 for 1-acre properties, it's just going to be uniform with the rest of the properties that are already there. There is R2 on the right side of the property, and across Corps of Engineers property, there's R1 that we approved
some time ago.
6 months, 7 months ago.
Right.
So the only actual A1 property that meets the standards we have now is their own farm across the street.
And if you're familiar with, there's just like house. She would just be the next house on that side of the road. Any questions for Sam? Discussion? This is a rezone request, so the same 3 options are what we have to work with to send this to the county court. I do want to make the planning commission aware that since I'm the uncle of Miss Sutherland, I will be recusing myself from voting. Mr. Secretary, if you'd make sure that's in the minutes.
Make the motion to approve, send with a favorable recommendation.
I have a motion by Mr. Swaffer to send this to the county court with a favorable recommendation, second by Mr. Noller. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed, please say no. It does pass unanimously with one abstention. Or recusal, I guess you'd say.
I also appreciate that because I can get away from a terrible neighbor across the street. On this problem.
Well, you noticed he voted in your favor. He's looking at his property values going up. Okay, so those are the three rezoning requests that we have for tonight. Next on our agenda is a preliminary plat approval for Freedom Estates. This is located on Bass Road of 34.96 acres of 16 lots. It doesn't say, but I was assuming that's Mr. Fleming. Am I correct? Okay, Mr. Fleming.
Thank you, guys. We've got 16 lots, ranging from about 1.3 acres to 5 acre lots. And here to answer any questions, comments, concerns.
Mr. Fleming's been before us a couple of times with this project and stuff, and he's now back for with a preliminary plat that he's asking approval for. Take a moment there to look at his plat. I think you've got a larger copy at your table if you want to see it. If anybody has a question for Mr. Fleming after you look at that, just raise your hand and we'll call on you. Okay. Well, while y'all are looking, we'll go on to Keelan then.
Sure, so I can just run through some of the context on this. As we said, this is for Freedom Estates, which we did see, I believe at the last meeting, we saw the concept plat. It's for 16 lots located on 34.96 acres. It is currently zoned R1 residential. The surrounding properties are zoned for agricultural and residential uses. This property is outside the Hartsville-Trousdale Water and Sewer Utility District, but a 4-inch water line supplied by the Castellian Springs Bethpage Water Utility District does appear to be located nearby on Bass Road. Sewer does not appear to be available in this area. Bass Road is identified as a minor street. The minimum lot area required for the R1, as we just discussed with the several rezonings, is 1 acre, and all of the proposed lots are greater than 1 acre. So within the plat issues, this is an updated plat since the comments were made. So the only remaining comment is comment D, which is we've asked that they include the size and location of any existing or proposed water lines, and if possible, include the location of a proposed fire hydrant.
Okay.
Or fire hydrant.
And I'm sure in your packet, there's a memo here from the Castellian Springs about water district, Bass Road development, review of water availability.
Yeah, I've been working with Benny, and he's been putting the water schedule together and using his engineers, send it off for approval. So they've got us going about a 2,500 linear foot water improvement, 6-inch line going down. He's got the 2 easements for the other 2 property owners approved to go ahead and do it to it.
Sounds good.
It's a 6 or a 4. I saw somewhere.
Well, there says there's a 6 on part of it and a 4 on part of it. Is that right, Mr. Fleming? On
6-inch now. There's no fire hydrants that are put on there because he said it doesn't have a pressure servicing upstream, which may be a 3 or 4-inch line. I don't know if that's what could be shown on there. But he's having us do a 6-inch.
Well, he's doing 6 inches so that in the future, when they replace that 4-inch line, then he would have enough pressure to do fire protection at that time. And if there is a 6-inch, then you would need some fire hydrants. Am I correct?
I believe that is correct, but.
Still there.
I'm sorry.
No.
Capacity there, you just still on the.
Well, I'm sorry, I
You
didn't.
got enough capacity to support a fire hydrant coming from the.
No, but I mean, sometimes we have put them in on a 6-inch for future, haven't we? Am I correct on that?
That would be left up to the water district.
Oh, okay.
Side, I would say.
Okay.
Typically, we require them on 6 inches and above, but if there is a flow issue,
Okay.
that could be something that could be changed.
Okay.
I asked Benny about that again today. He's like, it doesn't have the flow to service a fire hydrant, so.
It says it in her letter also.
Okay. You finish.
Yeah, so the only, just with the discussion, if the general consensus is that fire hydrants would not be required, then the only remaining part of that comment would be asking that they include the size and location of the existing or proposed water line.
Okay.
In the future, if they do upgrade this line, it would be responsible for fire.
So the water department at that point.
Castellans would have to do that
I
since,
mean, you could have the man put them in, it's just not gonna be a working.
and that's and that's a decision between Benny and Mr. Fleming.
Well, what would happen is, y'all would require him to put it in, and because of the flow and the pressure, they'll come out and they'll paint it black.
Oh,
It's a
okay.
non-working fire hydrant. But as Mitch was getting to, him increasing the line, it's pre-planted on Castaigne Springs side. But then again, that's between him and Castaigne Springs.
Right.
Because
That's what I was
when you go to the 6-inch line, you're gonna lose pressure.
Yeah, you don't have the flow for a fire
And
hydrant.
I'll defer, you know, if Benny says, hey, let's put them in, and the engineer and the approval say, hey, let's put them in, I'm fine to agree to that.
Yes, sir.
Question, Mr. Fleming, and with you saying that, how far on the 6, because I'm sorry, I can't tell where the 6 and the 4-inch line is on the drawing of this size. But how far up does the 6-inch line or down from?
So I'm gonna say the address is like 995 Bass Road or 955 Bass Road.
So is that,
But it's northbound, so if this is the intersection here coming in on Bass, it's northbound upstream 2 properties. So I'll be running it across the road and down the inside would be the eastern side of Bass Road.
okay, so there's not an actual 6-inch line on this property here.
No,
So,
From the highway, yes.
we'll be servicing from Bass Road, which is currently a 4-inch line. Like, I think it's up at 995 Bass Road.
or I'm just saying that this, so there is not a 6-inch line in front of these properties.
No, so that's our cost
So
to
there,
approve.
okay, so you're putting the 6-inch line in?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then to go ahead and put the fire hydrant, what you just need. Well, there aren't another, could he put one in the center and meet the 500
Yeah, they've got those
both
4
ways
lanes.
or?
Well, again, from what we've been advised, that's a decision between him and okay.
I guess what my question is
He'll call him that next time you see him.
He asked if he should come, and I was like, I don't think we're good, but I'll keep you posted if they need anything, and I'll fall back up.
so as this improvement is scheduled in your discussions with him, is there discussions of increasing the pressure on those lines once it's all 6-inch? Because I'm guessing at the end of your subdivision here, it's gonna drop back down to 4-inch.
There is no 4-inch there. There is no, there is no, so I'm running this water line 2,500 feet just so I could service these home sites here.
So you're going from a 6-inch line.
There is no 6-inch line down that road.
What they have in place at the beginning of the subdivision is 4-inch, and for him to create these lots, he has to put in a water line while they're making him put in a 6-inch.
I guess my question is, are they planning on upgrading their existing 4-inch that you're tying into?
I mean, that would be
To be able to
a
support
water utility.
Is he tying
Yeah.
into the 4-inch
But-
line or is he coming off of 231?
I don't think they're doing.
From
it.
what I
He's-
understand, he would be tying into a 4-inch.
So
Okay.
if we were to say, put a stipulation that you still have to put your fire hydrants in there, but they're not gonna upgrade the water line through there, they've got no ideas of doing that. It's just adding cost for no reason, it doesn't serve the fire protection, which that's in place for, that's what I'm just trying to figure out. Is that something that they're actually going to be doing, or?
Not that I'm aware of. I'll verify that with him, but he says what's coming upstream from it has no pressure to serve the fire. He says it's a 3-inch line coming into a new 6-inch line, so there's no flow capacity to have a fire hydrant and have it used.
And that's kind of what the letter kind of suggests also. I was wanting this little clarification because you said you had to be about down the road development, so I wanted to make sure that that was separate of this.
Correct, and that's what he is doing for future land use in case there ever was, but there is no plans that I'm aware of. But he worked with his engineering to submit to the state for all of this to go through. So I kind of let him handle all that going with the water.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Chairman, once this is settled and Castellian Water Department comes in and they decide to upgrade everything to a 6-inch line and do pressure, it's not like we can make them put in hydrants after the fact, correct?
We can't make Castellian, or we wouldn't, Mr. Jordan. It would be a
Exactly.
business decision that Castellian Springs Water District would have to make. I would think, isn't that right?
Well, Tommy's planning on putting new fire hydrants in throughout the county in certain areas. I mean, that's a business decision on the water department itself, so.
They would probably do it anyway, because I mean, they got fire hydrants all over the Sumner County on that side of the road, so that's probably just their standard protocol.
Okay. Mr. Thomas, any more questions? Any other questions from any other members? Okay, Sam, I don't believe we've been to you yet, have we?
I mean, there's nothing else to add.
Okay. Well, I don't want to leave you out.
Well, I appreciate it.
All right, discussion? If not, do I have a motion?
Motion to send this to the county commission and fire department.
Well, no, we're just approving.
That's not.
Yeah, we're just not going to the.
Yeah. I'm trying to hurry you.
It's like, man, I think I did the rezone already.
So,
I make a motion to approve.
he still lacks one thing on his, plat, is that right? One item.
Yes, we've,
Why don't you add with, that
Contingent on.
meeting all plat issues corrected.
which the only remaining one is that they include the site location of the proposed water line.
Right. Yeah. I saw Mr. Jordan making notes. He knows it, but we're consistent on that. We need to continue to be. All right. Motion by Ms. Kiesling to approve this contingent upon Mr. Fleming adding the other item of the plat issue to it. Second by Mr. Harper. Any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed, please say no. Item is approved. Next is a plat amendment for Willow Way subdivision, section 2. This is the Lewis Beasley property on Highway 141 North of 13.57 acres. Okay, that's Jim.
That's me. Can I borrow you? I didn't catch this last time. Okay, so this section, just for clarity, is only 9.08 acres. But anyway, y'all.
This is not the 13.5.
That was, I think it's got copy and pasted off the original submission we had, which was both sections together.
Okay.
So this is just section 2, which we approved last month. Mr. Beasley has decided he wants his 50-foot entrance that's going to the rear remaining portion in a different spot. So we shifted 2 lots over. That's the stem of the chain over here. We just moved where the 50-foot entrance is what we've done.
Give him better access to his farm behind it.
Yeah, you see, they got your both sheets. That's good. They got your both sheets. They're showing you where it's moved from one side to the other. Yeah, we got the same amount of lots. There's not a change in the lots. There may be a slight change in the acreage just because of where it is versus. Just slightly different on the acreage just because of where the 50-foot is. But that's the change. That's the change it was making. It's where that 50-foot is.
Okay. So what Jim is asking for is on our agenda, it calls it a amendment. It's just a change in the plat, a change of location of the 50-foot right of way back to his farm property. Anybody have any questions for Jim? Okay, Keeler?
Sure, so, and I apologize, there are some copy paste errors in the notes here. But once again, it will be a final plat for section 2 of the Willow Way subdivision. We're looking at 9.08 acres for an 8-lot subdivision on Highway 141 North. The property is zoned R1 residential. Surrounding property is zoned for agricultural and residential uses. Parcel is within Hartsville-Trousdale Utility District and has access to a 6-inch water line. All of the proposed lots are greater than 1 acre and do meet the minimum lot size requirement. There are no subdivision regulation issues or plat issues, so staff does recommend approval.
He has his fire hydrants on these.
We've already paid for the fire hydrants, and Tommy's already signed a plat pending y'all's approval to get recorded.
Okay. Questions for Keelan? Same?
It's the exact same plat we approved before, other than moving that one driveway entrance.
Okay. Anybody have a question for Sam? Discussion? Yes, sir.
Motion approved.
Have a motion by Mr. Noller to approve this. Right, to approve the new updated, amended plan. Okay, so I have a motion by Mr. Noller to approve the amended, updated plat. Second by Mr. Thomas. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed, please say no. Motion does pass. And next. Oh, okay. Is an amendment. We're being asked to amend the Trousdale County zoning resolution development standards for private campgrounds and a procedure for authorizing special exceptions. I sat in on a committee meeting of Mr. Thomas's where they discussed this. I guess that was last week, and stuff. So, David, I guess we'll let you.
So the discussion has come up looking at the campground regulations in both the county and the cities. They're identically worded, and all that came out of the discussion was going to be before you is an ordinance that will remove exclusively that one word out of both of those, so that it would then make it legal for restaurant at a campground to be able to serve other individuals than just the campground residents. We think it's an undue burden on any restaurant to be able to operate based on anywhere from 10 to 20 something campground sites to be able to function. Sumner County is way more restricted than we are, and they already have this in place. They allow marinas and campgrounds to service other people outside their facilities. So we're just kind of stepping up to that and trying not to overregulate businesses.
Yeah, Bledsoe's been serving people for years. I mean, they got a place off to the side where they'll get you drunk, and then you go across the street and feed you.
I think we talked about that Pine Cove. Then
we have,
yeah.
And that ordinance, that ordinance has already gone to Mr. Beller for his review.
Okay. Discussion? You know, I think with our proximity, and we have so much land on the river, campgrounds could be a new business opportunity for some people. I don't know, you know, I don't know how difficult it is working with the Corps of Engineers, but if you put in a marina or something like that, you know, Well, I do know how difficult it is, but you know, I'm just saying this could be a future business opportunity, I guess is what I'm trying to say for somebody. But what you have before you is an ordinance which would bring these two together. And Mr. Beller has already looked at this and stuff, and what the committee on the county court is asking for is that we discuss this, and if we agree with it, approve it, and send it to the county court for passage. So discussion.
So when you're taking the word exclusively out of the ordinance,
Right. Section 1, say it's 2H, that way it's considered the cost. Right.
What's that mean?
That's
You take it out of 1B and section H. Yeah, yeah, it'll be coming out of both sections. Because the ordinance and the county resolution. This here. There's nowhere else coming out.
Keelan, do you have any comment on this? Sam?
It's a simple change and it fixes the situation like we have. So
Okay. Hearing no discussion, do I hear any motions? Mr. Nolan?
Make a motion to approve this with that exchange in the wording.
Have a motion by Mr. Nolan to send this to the county commission for approval with the changes recommended by the Code and Zoning Committee of Trousdale County. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Gregory. Any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed, please say no. It does pass and can be sent on now to the county commission. And last on our agenda, as we've been doing the last few months, is our discussion pieces for the night. Commercial building design guidelines and codes and zoning discussion. I remember last month we've been talking about the look and things of our commercial building design guidelines and that type of thing now. And last month we talked about some other things to send to the county commission, which then sends it to the codes committee. Tonight, this one happens to be up for our discussion. And Keelan was going to look into this and try to help us out. First, I see on our agenda the discussion for the commercial is the, okay, it's part of that. Keelan, would you like to go into that?
All right, so we're back. So first I'd like to just take us through sort of establish the system that we're going to try and knock these out. So last month we discussed this number 1, which is the proposed tree preservation and maintenance requirements. We also discussed the specific criteria for stormwater management systems and facilities. In digging into that a bit more, it's a bit more complicated. So I'm requesting a little bit more time to work on that one and figure out exactly what the requirements will be. We also discussed proposed ADA parking lot design requirements. So those were for last month. So we discussed them, came up with a couple of comments and things that we would like to see included. So I've written up here a couple of proposed requirements or standards. So just to walk us through the tree preservation requirement first. This is broken out into first tree preservation standards, which is where we spent a lot of time last month discussing. So it does say within all industrial and commercial zoning districts, trees shall be preserved in the following ways. So we're saying that all 4-inch to 7-inch caliper trees removed must be replaced at a 25% caliper ratio. And what we mean by caliper ratio is that if they remove 2 7-inch trees, they can replace it with 1 14-inch tree. That is so, or 25% of a 14-inch tree, whatever. We also say that 8 inches to 23-inch caliper trees in good condition shall be preserved. And then we say that all 24-inch or greater caliper, which we're calling heritage trees, shall be preserved. And the difference between that 8 and 23 with the good condition is that that gives the planning commission some subjectivity to be able to decide what trees are in good condition and what trees are not. For all trees above 24 inches, whether in good condition or not, if they want to take one of those trees down, it has to go before the PTA. So we do include then a comment about deviation from these standards requires a variance to be granted by the Board of Zoning Appeals. Based on proof that the condition or location of the tree would create an undue burden on the development of the lot. In granting the variance, the Board of Zoning Appeals may require that trees greater than 8 inches shall be replaced at an equivalent caliper ratio elsewhere on the property. Do we have any comments on that one first? That all sounds like what we talked about last month. Okay. Moving on, we've included some existing vegetation in buffer yards. So this is where we discussed some leniency for tree stands located, typically we're looking at like fence rows. So existing trees within the required buffer yards. So these are those required screening yards beyond like a setback, side yard. So these are the buffer yards. They may be counted towards a maximum of 50% of the required shrubs and or trees. Credit preference is given to stands of trees, which we're defining as 5 or more trees clustered together, or trees of significant size, which is 10 inches or greater. Any comments on that? All right, so yes, sir.
I guess where I'm hesitant on that one of the maximum of 50%. So the whole point of the vegetation is to give a sound and visual buffer along with the solid fencing.
Mm-hmm.
Is 50 maybe a little too much to give?
That is up to you guys for discussion. I am happy to make it whatever you guys see fit. So 50% would mean that if you have the sides and back of your property is an old fence row that has some brushy small trees and some scrub, then you could count that towards 50% of your required landscaping, which would mean that you would still have to include half of the required shrubs and trees. So that would create a slightly more unified look. With the 50% required still to be planted, but would allow for, would acknowledge that those existing fence rows or whatever do create a bit of a barrier.
And I guess my concern that I'm bringing forward is in doing the 50%, which I understand it's a maximum, but at that 50%, now we leave gaps in the buffer strip because you've got 5 trees over here, 2 trees over here, and there might be 50 foot in between them, but they've got enough now. And so with the other, I'm just afraid that you end up gaps in the buffer strip. By allowing.
I see what you're saying. That's a good point.
Would including a sentence, 50% of the required shrubs or trees, credit preference given to stands of trees or trees of significant size. We could add a sentence saying that
as long as
in the event of
as long as a continuous buffer,
creating a continuous buffer land.
Continuous, I think is the word we're wanting to put in. Just how, how do we want to word that?
I can wordsmith that. Yeah.
Okay.
Thinking of the intent of why we created that buffer strip in the first place, wanting to maintain the integrity of that, at the same time still preserving our larger trees at the same time. And
like we talked about, it'd be ridiculous to have someone bulldoze down a fence line, as Keelan put it, and then come back with younger trees that are so small it's going to take them years to get up to. Even if it's a scrub tree, it still takes a good while.
Yeah, and maybe my, if I'm not mistaken, our buffer strip now, Sam, correct me if I'm wrong, is trees and shrubs.
It is.
It's trees and shrubs and the fence,
Yeah,
with
so-
a 10-foot.
So if we still allow the 40% credit on the tree side of it, but they still have to do the shrubs across the front. That would still give at least some continuance with the trees there.
And this wouldn't, the fence is,
Yeah, the fencing would be
Fence
set,
is
Period.
required.
so it's just,
so that you're not, there's not just big gaps of, landscaping.
I think a
between
perfect,
these stands.
I think a perfect example would be the, on Newhall Town, the townhouses or the quadplexes that we
Yep.
just approved a couple months ago. We gave him, authority to not have to put it all the way down the hill in the back because it is all wooded.
Yeah,
Well, this, instead of us going to a special requirement, we could say, well, you are vegetated for the whole back of your property, so go half the way back, and then you can stop.
Yeah.
You're covered 50%.
and of course, we told him, I remember I told him specifically, make sure the fence that, put the fence down on the property line between him and his only neighbor.
Yeah.
So even though there is heavily wooded out that way, the fence is still, yeah.
I just want to make sure that intent doesn't get lost in our wording.
I think you've made a good point. I never thought about the gaps that could result. That's a very good point. I think we can let Keelan wordsmith that with the word continuous in there.
Yep.
And come back with something there.
I can bring you guys something to vote on for next month that
Thank you.
includes that sentence as well. So the next section is a tree preservation plan, which we also discussed. So this says to receive credit for existing trees, a tree preservation plan shall be submitted as part of a landscaping plan. So just quickly, that first sentence is intended to exclude tree preservation plans for those 4 to 7 inch caliper trees that were then putting in as 25%, or those 8 inch to 23 inch trees that are in good condition that shall be preserved. Those don't require that tree preservation plan. It's for the it's for when we're trying to use the 50% existing trees for the buffer, if that makes sense. So to receive credit for existing trees, a tree preservation shall be submitted as part of the landscape plan. A certified arborist shall review the tree preservation plan and shall visit the site to confirm the accuracy of the tree survey. The certified arborist shall provide documentation regarding the health and survivability of existing vegetation and establish the critical root zone of each tree or grove of trees. The enforcing officer may waive the requirement for a certified arborist if the disturbed area is less than 20 feet away from the existing canopy drip line, and the existing vegetation on site creates an opaque screen from the adjacent property. Any questions about that?
Everybody
You're
good with
talking about that first sentence,
Mm-hmm.
existing trees. Instead of it just starting as a tree preservation, into the plan, existing trees 8 inches or larger, would that?
I don't know if I'd wanna put a number on it necessarily.
Okay.
But I think existing tree preservation or credit tree preservation plan, something like that would be helpful. Do we like existing tree preservation plan?
Because we do want to leave it a little,
some leeway.
almost exactly the way it's worded. We can add something like she just said, because it is talking about the undergrowth can be considered. So the trees and the undergrowth in this section for the tree. So the enforcing officer may waive the requirement for a certified arborist if the disturbed area is at least 20 feet away from the existing canopy drip line and the existing vegetation on the site creates an opaque screen from the adjacent properties, which in a lot of cases, that's the undergrowth mixed with the big trees and the shrubbery that's already existing, which most of that won't even be considered into the 4 to 7 inch.
And I guess the reason I was looking at that was at the top where we've got the tree preservation standard. B and C both have, in good conditions listed there. And then, we discussed last month, who determines whether they're in good conditions, and you have the arborist come out. So then it just puts it all back in on a certain versus you just saying, yeah, this tree's dead. I just cut it down.
What wording did you suggest there?
Well, so I think if we put existing tree preservation plan, because we do have, so the first requirement under the tree preservation standards, that 4 through 7 caliper inch trees, the only requirement we're saying there, we're not saying you have to certify your tree, like your trees on a plan, but if you cut down these trees, you have to replace them at a 25% caliper ratio. And that's something that we would capture on the existing landscape plan. This tree preservation plan would be like an addendum to that landscape plan. And this is for those trees where you're seeking credit. So you're trying to have the requirement for the landscaping lessened so that you may use, get credit for the.
So that section is just for qualifying for the credit. So it's instead of referring to your whole plan.
Yeah, and I mean, if that first sentence says to receive credit for existing trees, if that doesn't make that clear, we can definitely wordsmith that. If you guys would like me to do that.
I understand the idea of not getting too specific in our wording, at the same time being too general. I think it gets us in trouble also.
That's very true.
So you'd like to see her kind of work on that?
I would.
Okay.
Just to strengthen that just a bit.
Okay.
Would it be helpful to say to receive credit to reduce the required landscaping requirements for existing trees, something like that?
Listed as a separate, so that a property owner doesn't expect to have to go and have an arborist inspect all of his buffer trees also. If they're not planning on cutting any down, then there's no reason to have to pay the expense of an arborist. At the same time, if Sam were to go and see that there's, a couple of dead trees in the tree line, he doesn't have to give them credit for that. They're already visibly dead trees.
I may be the only one, but if you ever watch Nature on PBS, dead trees are a vital part of the ecosystem as far as birds and animals and homes for them. Of course, that's an old science teacher talking.
David Attenborough here. Okay, I think I've got that noted. Is there any other comments for that section 3.1 for the preservation plan? Okay, so I will move on then. The last portion of this is for tree protection during construction. Now this is just pretty much taken, I believe right out of Sumner County, but one of the neighboring counties. So what this includes is that we are requiring that protective barricades shall be placed around the critical root zone of all trees designated in the tree preservation plan prior to the start of development activities and shall remain in place until the development activities are complete. A protection barrier or tree fence shall be installed a minimum of 3 feet in height around the tree or tree grove that is identified to be protected. The tree fence shall be constructed of a barrier material that's securely fastened to a wood or metal frame, properly braced by 2 by 4 inch minimum structural members with cross braces or another form of substantial barrier approved by the county. The area within the protective barricade shall remain free of all building materials, dirt, or other construction debris and vehicles. No substantial disturbance shall occur within the protective barricade, including compaction of soil, trenching, placing backfill, grading, or dumping trash, oil, paint, or other materials detrimental to plant health. And failure to comply with these requirements will result in the denial of tree credits, and the landscaping plan will have to be modified to include new tree plantings.
Yeah, I believe that's passage ready, isn't it?
All right.
So any other suggestions? Keelan's gone through all of these and have had some good suggestions. Ms. Overman, you're on that committee. If you have any, don't hesitate to speak up. I understand, but I mean, this is coming to you next. So if you have concerns, questions, or things like that, feel free to speak up. Okay. just want you to know you're, you know, if you have something, just.
Okay.
Anything else? All right, Keelan?
Okay, so, like I said, I wasn't able to get the, specific criteria for stormwater management and systems and facilities completed. I did have a question for you, actually. You know.
I don't want to take questions on the spot.
All right, can you send me an email later letting me know if, does the county participate in the MS4 requirements for stormwater quality? Is it an MS4?
Great question for Heather Bay.
So the stormwater management, majority of it, we don't have to comply with at the moment
Like that?
because of population.
Oh, okay. So not an MS4 community, that's a population threshold thing? Okay.
So you have to have meet a certain population requirement before stormwater management goes to meets a certain. Is that a?
I'm not.
I believe we're under this. I believe we're under the discussion right now with. We might be breaching that threshold. So that might change here shortly.
Okay, so in this discussion of trying to get these specific criteria, would we prefer that they meet MS4?
What is MS4?
For most, we're talking about commercial right now, so I think it is beneficial to just require them to do it, and most commercial contractors are going to do it anyways.
They're used to doing it if it's a commercial requirement.
So I don't think it matters one way or the other. We could put it in there for the future so we don't have to change it because they're already doing it. There. So it's not going to be a change on the contractor side.
I'd go ahead. I would recommend we go ahead and put it in there.
Okay.
That was the point I agree, because if we're already at that threshold that we might have to do it,
or
we
almost
might as well go ahead and plan on doing it, so we might have to come back and do it again.
right.
Well, this commercial, like I said, the commercial stuff, it's not going to be a change on the commercial side anyways, because they already do it. So.
We'll just put it in stone so they have.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Well, I will take that back then. So the next one, moving on to the proposed ADA parking lot design requirements. So this one shouldn't be too crazy. Currently what's in here is pulled from the ADA requirements, the standards put out by the federal government. I would never recommend that we put in our regulations anything less strict than this, but we can if we would like to make it more strict.
Well, let's definitely not do less. I don't know.
Yes, I agree.
Washington on our, we don't have to.
That would cause trouble. So the first one, parking lot design, we have the minimum number of accessible parking spaces. We've outlined these there for a range that goes from 1 to 25 all the way up to 501 to 550. And then it designates the required standard accessible spaces and the van accessible spaces. All that is that the aisleway, the size of the aisleway between them is larger. So then we also have included just those requirements. So the parking stall minimum 96 inches wide and 19 to 20 feet long. A minimum 60 inch wide by one length of adjacent parking stall aisle. That needs to say aisle. Sorry, my bad. Okay, and then 2 ADA parking spaces may share an accessible aisle between them. Then for the van accessible parking stalls, it's a minimum of 132 foot wide and 19 to 20 foot long. And the aisle is a minimum of 96 wide and one length of the adjacent parking stall. Once again, they can share. So we also have location requirements, which where parking serves multiple entrances to a facility. Accessible spaces shall be dispersed among accessible entrances. If the number of accessible entrances exceeds the number of accessible spaces, additional accessible spaces, I've done a lot of talking tonight, I apologize, are not required. So accessible parking spaces must be located on the shortest accessible route to an accessible entrance. Relative to other spaces in the same parking facility, the maximum travel distance is not specified in the standards. Give me a second.
You want me to read that?
For example, at the administration building, the handicap parking place is at the far end of the parking lot, not where the handicap ramp is.
Oh, boy.
Or at the back of the building. I don't know. Yeah,
Is it near the ramp?
it is. Well, it's the closest spot to the ring.
In the back, but the front, it's at the far end of the parking lot.
Would that be a grandfather issue or?
I don't think anything's grandfather with ADA.
Well, I don't know, with the old high school, the middle school.
Well, do you remember a year or two ago, they came in and had us to comply as a county with ADA? And we had to come up with a plan.
I would have thought it'd been more than a year or two ago, but.
They had to come up, it was like 2 years ago maybe, but they had to come up with a plan, or like a 2-year plan of us complying with their standards.
An ADA transition plan.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so we also have accessible spaces required for one parking facility can be located in another if doing so results in substantially equal or better access in terms of travel distance to an accessible entrance, parking fee, or user conveniences such as protection from weather, better security and lighting. Minimum number must still be determined separately for each parking facility. Locating accessible spaces required for the parking structure in a surface lot often will not qualify for this exception because such a location typically offers less convenience, security, and protection from the elements. So this is essentially just talking about like a strip mall. Each shop must has their own requirements, but if somehow there's a walkway or something that would provide security, protection from the weather, lighting, they can locate those closer to those than closer to the shop, if that makes sense. All right, do we have any questions about any of what I just said about location?
So the gist of that one is all about accessibility, right?
Yeah, so that one's more just if you have parking lot that's being shared amongst many businesses, how do you then determine where those parking spaces are required to be?
And so listening to that, it sounds as if each business is responsible for their own ADA parking. So
yes,
if you've got a common building owner and each business is leasing that, it's the building owner's responsibility for the parking lot and whatnot. So it's their.
Well, when they brought us that plat, we would make sure they did adhere to that.
Right.
During the plat design and approval and everything.
But,
and then if they had like a covered walking,
so like a food,
then it would be, obviously it would be near the covered parking area located there, because you would want to get people in out of the elements as quickly as possible or as easily as possible.
And I would say, if we're in our hypothetical looking at like a strip mall type building, there can be a retail next to a dentist office. Medical facilities have different ADA requirements for the number of ADA accessible parking spaces. So that, say they're the same size, the retail has to have 2, the dentist has to have 4, but because there's a covered walkway over here, we can put all of them over here.
okay.
How would that affect existing parking? I mean, shopping areas or?
Well, there's a lot of restriping you can do because a lot of these aisleways and things are roughly the size of a 96-inch wide by 20 foot is kind of just another parking spot. So you just paint some blue lines on it and nobody can park there. Put some signage up. You can
Are businesses required? Are there rules that require updating those? I mean,
They get inspected.
Yeah, I'd say that's the ADA.
Who does that? Is that
The state.
state does that? I didn't know who did it.
I'm not
figured
involved in any of it, but
No, I understand. But I'm saying, it was
all it takes is one person falling and they'll be inspected.
well, they'd be sued. Yeah, they won't be.
Yeah. Yeah, all the businesses are required, the ADA Accessibility Act requires.
Every other commercial on TV will help you do that.
This is just kind of helping do our due diligence as a community to make sure that we
Right.
also have these
Sure.
requirements.
Right.
So it's not that they're not existing currently. And then the final requirement is for required public sidewalks. So we're just including the sentence that all required public sidewalks associated with the development must also, shall meet the requirements outlined in this section. And all that's saying is that, if we require that you put a sidewalk along your road frontage, even if it's in the right of way, it still has to be ADA accessible. So that meets all the sidewalk width. And I do believe the widths in the sidewalk ordinance that Hartsville also has do meet those requirements, but let's just read it.
Pass that in our subdivision regulations, we address that directly.
I believe so, yes.
It does bring up the conversation though, the new sidewalks that were put in 6 years ago that the county put in up Andrews and up East Main. Were those ADA compliant when they were put in, and is the county gonna have to address that?
I don't know. I mean, what the goal at that time was to put back what was there. So I don't know.
If those were not, if they don't meet the standards, that is something they would have captured in that ADA transition plan. So maybe.
Mr. Mayor Carmen at that time, the person he hired to do that was an ADA person. And he knew how to put them. When he built them that way. If I remember right.
I think what we mainly is talking about the width.
Yeah.
You know, and again, they just kind of went back with what they was already.
I mean, we could easily find out. We just need to go pull the ADA transition plan, which some of the stuff, I was looking at it 2 months ago, some of the stuff on it never got met, so.
Yeah.
We still got a bunch of boxes to check.
I know that was one of the concerns with doing the Broadway project of doing the sidewalk without a grant is because of the cost of having to do it to the state standards and the ADA compliance on that because of the grade and whatnot. So I didn't know if doing those other sections, if they were still ADA compliant, just cheaper to do. And that's why they were, might be something, especially if we're gonna put this forward to the county commission, they're gonna wanna know those answers also.
Well, we obviously do want that. And like David said, Mayor Carmen was cognizant of that at that time. And Sam said, that's a pretty easy fix. Just go back and look at the plan and see. And I know we've got that, what's it called? That modal, the grant approved for the sidewalk going up Broadway. And, obviously that one will be because they'll have to present those drawings and stuff to the state. Since the state's going to be doing it, then what we've got is Keelan's going to come back with some language proposals for the tree thing, for the tree resolution. And she's going to come back with some more things on the stormwater runoff. But I believe what she's given us here with the parking lot, the ADA parking lot, we haven't really changed any of that. So my question is, are we ready to pass that and send it on to the county court, or how did we talked about doing these things as we passed them so we don't just bog up the count with a whole bunch of them at one time.
My intention was to bring it back in front of you one more time.
Okay.
Formatted
That's
within the zoning ordinance so that it'll have a section number and fit it better.
Sounds good.
If you don't.
No, I don't mind at all. I think that's great. I just don't want to send like 5 or 6 things to the county at one time. They're going to get sent down to that one committee and
with the ADA, I don't see a reason for it. That's federal regulation. We're not adding to it. Really, legally, we really shouldn't take anything from it, and we haven't discussed that tonight. I don't see any reason why it should just go to the full court.
Well, she wants to put it, after she, right.
And I would say the only thing that doesn't come straight out of the federal language is that item D that required public sidewalks. Which is something we had discussed.
This is not a big packet, so I mean, if we wait till it's all formatted and send it all in one group, I mean, it's not,
that's fine.
really not that big.
That's fine. Again, I don't want to get a whole bunch of it.
So it's just going to be more and more each month.
Right.
So I will try to.
Because of this, tell me what the next one as far as the appearance of commercial buildings. I don't think we need to keep those separate as they go forward to the commission. So that if there are dissenting opinions about one or the other, it doesn't affect the whole group going up.
Okay, we want to consider them sort of in sections of that first one was trees and ADA, then we'll consider architecture, and then next month I'll bring stormwater and some of the corrections to the,
Good way.
Okay,
we can just do them in chunks. Okay.
sounds good.
Well, that's how I was kind of visualizing it in my head. Okay, so the real meat and potatoes that we've been waiting for is the architecture requirements. So I've formatted this similar to the way we looked at it last time. I've included the particular parts of the architecture design requirements that we were interested in creating specific standards for. And I've tried to pull out those requirements from other examples from other counties and communities. So the first one, I could only really find an example in Portland, Tennessee's design guidelines, and that is for offsets. So I have the image there as well to help, but what this one says is the maximum length of the plane of any facade is 40 feet. Exterior walls of any building longer than 40 feet shall have recesses or projections at a minimum depth of 10% of the longer adjacent unbroken wall length and be proportional to the building's height and length. Projections used to break up the length of the building shall extend to the ground. The design review committee may waive this requirement for industrial uses. And then see figure 3, which is the photo there. Do we have any comments about that? Anything at all? It's kind of a basic idea, but 10% is could potentially be 10 feet on a 100-foot building, if that seems like too much. If 40-foot exterior walls seems like too long of a wall or too short of a wall. I'd love any feedback on that one.
You said you could only find an example in Portland.
Yeah, that addresses offsets in particular. There were several communities have sort of more vague language about you have to create architectural elements that break up the facade, but they don't specify offsets.
But that could be canopies.
Exactly.
Canopies. It doesn't have to be exactly an offset.
Right. So this offset is really for the shape of that facade in particular.
So I guess I have a question for the committee is, would you rather an actual offset or go with something about breaking up the, however she just put it?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of requiring the offset because that, I mean, as most of it, I've built many houses, and the more you break it up, the more cost you incur.
No, this isn't houses.
Well, it's the same thing. You break it up, you break that building,
Okay.
It's gonna cost you more money. That's what I'm saying. I'm not a big fan of that personally.
Okay.
There are options for the way offset or, canopy or whatever, just to break it up.
So can I pose, would we have an interest in requiring offsets for entrances? So imagining a downtown or a strip mall having a indent for doors, similar to what you think of in sort of a traditional small town like the downtown buildings, or no offsets at all. We'll just add language about breaking up with architectural elements.
I think the idea of doing an offset just for the entrance of the building is an acceptable idea. I think Mr. Swafford's idea of no offset at all. I think as far as a mandatory, because then you're restricting certain businesses who, their building looks a certain way. You're some of those, like even a Taco Bell still has offsets built into their standard building plan. You look at Hartsville Pharmacy, and I would like to say that that's longer than 40 foot. And I mean, technically it's got offsets at the entrances, but besides that, it's a flat, but it's still a good looking building. It still, kind of fits what we've all discussed, kind of what we're going for.
Those entrances they have I would put that under an architectural interest type thing, the way of course, that was a real old building, and they worked with what they had there.
I don't think Mark is saying require one, you're saying, I don't think you're saying you can't have one, you're saying don't require.
Mandated.
Yeah, what I'm taking from this is that we're gonna require the facade be broken up with architectural elements. Offsets are an option, but not a requirement.
I think that's,
That's what
Okay,
Everybody like that?
okay, so I can,
I can back David up on looking into a lot of these businesses. They have a set blueprint that you will build or you won't get the business.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you're an investor and you say you want to come in and put a Dunkin' Donuts, they require you to have a certain size lot first.
Yeah.
And then they require you to build this exact building, period. And if you can't meet both of those, you don't get it.
Yeah.
So you have to go find a different lot.
and I think Heather brought up at a previous meeting of us not over regulating to a point we were excluding businesses from coming in.
Right.
But doing enough that it still gives us what we're looking for as far as managing the appearance.
Right.
And I think that really does, and especially requiring it to go, the offset to go all the way from the ground to the roof. I mean, an offset that went halfway up, it's still an architectural feature, it still breaks up the monotony of a flat building.
Yeah.
I think it still accomplishes kind of what we're looking for in this. So I think, yeah.
I think everybody pretty much has agreed with the compromise language that y'all were just talking about.
okay.
Okay, so we can move on.
I like flat buildings, so.
All right, so moving on, building materials. So I've given us a lot of different examples from surrounding communities. So for the first one, this is Sumner County's. I've kind of put in bold the sort of summary of how they do their building materials. So Sumner County likes to identify primary and supporting materials allowed. They do not require a set percentage is required, and it breaks up materials by structure. So by structure, roof, windows, doors, and fences. So they state that materials, the use of natural materials is encouraged. The following is a list of approved primary exterior materials, along with those materials that are approved only as supporting materials. So under primary structure, they then have approved primary exterior materials being brick, wood, including log style stone and faux stone. They have the approved supporting exterior materials as hardy board or stucco. For roofs, they have asphalt shingles, metal slate, terracotta, or wood. Windows are just wood and vinyl. Doors are wood, metal, and vinyl clad. And then fences shall not exceed 6 feet in height and must be made of brick, wood, stone, rock, and raw iron.
How would this, just off the top of my head, how would this affect, say we built a new school?
Well, your windows in the new school, that's one thing when I was gonna bring up, that your windows in the new school are gonna be metal. Those frames are metal.
Yeah, I understand
So-
that. I was thinking about the roof. We hope that we never, ever build another flat roof on a school.
Well, we just,
You know, we're coming to the county court this summer. I mean, this budget session. We have to put a new roof on the elementary school.
and we've already replaced the middle school.
We replaced Bill, and we want to do the same thing type roof with the elementary school. It stopped the water leaks 100% at the middle school and has extended the life of that building to, you know, who knows? But I mean, you know, I just hope we don't ever put another flat roof.
Well, based on what she's got here, it won't allow a flat roof.
That's good. I like that.
So I mean, they could do a very low pitch metal.
Yeah, and that's what technically, that's what the roof is on the middle school, is a low pitch.
So
The gymnasium doesn't look that way because it sticks out anyway, you know.
but things like hotels or large industrial buildings that will have a flat roof, we're saying no to it.
Sam, as far as building codes go, is there a pitch minimum in Tennessee?
There are minimum pitches because of weight, but you can get around that with other things. That's a very broad question.
I wouldn't want something that we did for aesthetics to conflict with building code.
There's ways around it. They could do parquet walls, you know, and stuff like that, and actually have a traditional roof hidden behind the parquet walls. But then again, we'll be limiting them on building height.
Yeah, because you can't go above 30 foot.
35 feet. You can't go above 35 feet. So if they have to put a parquet wall and try to hide a roof system behind that, without it showing, then you just wasted 5 to 10 foot of their buildable height.
Yeah.
To try to hide that roof. So
that I don't think is fair to the business, the builders, to have them do that extra expense just for hiding a pitch.
Okay. Well, so this is just Sumner County. So Springfield is the next one that we have here, which does it a bit differently. So Springfield identifies materials that are preferred, limited, or prohibited. Limited materials may only comprise of 25% of side or rear walls. Other proposed materials are considered on a case-by-case basis. So essentially that exterior building materials includes, and I pulled this from their historic district residential something, HDRO, I can't remember what that stands for, but it's their historic downtown zone. So limited wall materials may only be used for up to 25% of side or rear walls. Prohibited wall materials shall not be used at all. Proposals using different exteriors may be considered on a case-by-case basis, provided it meets the purpose and intent of the district. So for their preferred wall materials, they have brick, stone, fade-resistant quick brick, fade-resistant artificial stone, architectural panels, and hardy board.
I want to thank y'all for coming. It's always good to have people come and see.
You want a donut?
No.
As far as limited wall materials, so those that can be less than 25% of rear side and rear walls are concrete or split face block, hard coat or textured stucco, exterior insulation finishing systems, hardy or cementitious siding, which I didn't know was a word. They prohibit vinyl, aluminum, unsurfaced or unpainted concrete blocks, plywood, wood shapes, asphalt shingles, cementitious,
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Cementitious siding, plastic or fiberglass. So alternative proposals for exteriors may be considered, such as standard corporate design.
Let me ask a question.
Yes.
Cement siding, isn't that hardy board?
You can.
You can get it in 4 sheets, 4x8.
I'm just saying, under their prohibited wall materials, there at the top of that where she's trying to say cementitious siding, that's siding made out of cement.
Well, they do have hardy panels specifically noted in preferred wall materials. So they do make it different.
That's what I say. I don't.
I have never seen it or had to read it, so.
I thought hardy board was made out of cement.
It is. And like I said, you can get it in a whole sheet 4x8, or you can get it longer actually, or you can get it in strips like you would have a look of wood siding.
Or did I measure?
My guess would be that the hardy board is more of like a product, like pressed and industrial produced board, where cementitious siding is most likely if they were to put some sort of like mold and then just pour concrete. That would be my guess.
Well, they've got it limited and then prohibited as well, so that's pretty.
Well, and that also is yeah, less than 25% of side or rear walls. So I think having it included in the prohibited wall materials just means absolutely not for the front facade.
So Keelan, how do they get away with having, and we discussed that in the previous meeting, the state has actually ruled that if it's an approved building material, a county municipality can't prohibit a building being built with it. So how are they getting?
I mean, she can answer it more in thorough detail, but it goes back to your 20-year plans and 30-year plans. If you say it needs to look like this through this area.
So it's because there is a specific versus an overall zoning. Is
That has a portion of it. There's also the building material legislation that came through a couple of years ago is written very not clearly. And the way that it really kind of came out, it doesn't specifically say that you may not prohibit a building material. It does attach a lot of requirements for how you advertise agendas in which you're proposing to prohibit a material. That ended up being sort of the thing that had the most teeth in it. So Mr. Beller would probably be the best person to really dig into exactly what we would need, but it is not illegal to prohibit it. And of course, this is also just within commercial, so not completely prohibiting it.
Because I saw in Lebanon, they've got what they call the South Hartman Corridor District that they created. And they've gone to very elaborate lengths of regulating building materials and all that in that district. Well, that district actually takes up the majority of, say, from where the main Wilson Bank branch is, all the way to almost the Kroger, you know, where Medora Parkway comes into West Main. They're calling that, I mean, they took half the city and said, here's our district. And so now everything built in that area has to conform to these very, I thought they were very strict regulations.
Does it include the old Kmart? Does it have to meet those new?
They're remodeling it right now.
I know, that's what I knew. I just wondered if they was in that corridor.
Yeah. So that whole end where they're doing all the expansion and stuff, all that new growth falls underneath this also. I was talking with Rick Harding on that. I'm sorry, it's another individual I know, Rick Gregory, and asking his opinion on that because I know he worked in Lebanon for quite some time. And he doesn't necessarily agree with the ability. He thinks there might be some issues if they were ever sued, that they kind of overreached in their specificness of those regulations. And so I'd like for us to make sure that as we're doing this, we accomplish what we're wanting to without getting ourselves into a situation where we're too specific in our building material. I really like the idea that Gallatin has with the 70% of a building, you know, and making sure that the facade, and then giving that leeway for the rest of the building so that we can't get in any trouble saying, well, you told me I couldn't. Oh no, you can do it. We just don't want to go in the front.
Percentage is the thing, like you're saying. Yeah. You give them the ability to use the cheaper item, but it needs to be on the back or sides.
And in the less visual area, so we still get our benefit, but then the builder's not hit with a bunch of extra expense.
On something that's never going to be seen much, exactly. Except by delivery people or something.
Having put the money where it counts.
Yeah, kind of yeah. I'm like David. I like the 70%. I like that part of the Sumner County. I like their approved materials. I don't have a problem with the preferred materials in either one of them. I don't know what fade resistant quick brick is. I assume that's some kind of artificial brick maybe or something, and just fade resistant makes sense. I mean, to me, you know, you don't want to allow something in 10 years it's going to be just you know, flushed out or something.
A lot of this stuff like Bowstone, the quick brick stuff, it's just specialized stuff. Like the Bowstone is just really, really light fake stone. It looks like stone, right. It's not stone. So
kind of like what the Minute Mart's made of. If you look at the Minute Mart building,
it's actually a different product. I've got.
Well, it's so old they didn't have that back then.
But I've got the faux stone on around the foundation of my house. The only problem with that is not installed correctly. You don't have someone maintaining the building. It will fall off winter after winter.
Oh, yeah.
As moisture gets behind it and freezes, it pops the mortar. I constantly have to go back and reattach with adhesive so that I don't have that expanding issue. I'll eventually replace all of it at one point.
Right.
But that's just the maintenance issue that a commercial building, I don't know if they would be as diligent with. So if they do the foam, we'll have to make sure that the inspector, to make sure that they put it, whatever the product recommends, the installation on there.
What do you other guys think about? What parts of Sumner, Springfield do you like, or?
Yeah, well, and I mean, so I won't make you guys go through all of them, but if you wouldn't mind, I'll just briefly run through the structure of some of these other ones.
Okay.
So Portland they include a table of building materials allowed within each zoning district or within each use. They required multifamily to be similar to surrounding properties, and they require facades to be made of a minimum of 2 materials. And they just dictate where on the facade materials can change, which is that figure 4. So I won't read it through all of it. Then we have Wilson County identifies prohibited materials within commercial and industrial zones and identifies a few allowed materials, but ultimately leaves it to the discretion of the Planning Commission. They also identify specific uses or circumstances that are exempt from this requirement. Gallatin requires buildings in different zoning districts to be constructed of various percentages of stone or brick, and then requires architecture and material compatibility with neighboring buildings. And that is the last one I pulled for building materials. So they have a couple different structures. It sounds like we like the percentage idea.
I like number 1 under Wilson County. Building material, I don't know if we need to, but if you have a list of approved materials and that's not one of the approved materials, I guess that would take care of that also, wouldn't it?
For not allowing metal. Yeah.
Well, it's number 1 is it's not allowing the metal on facing public roads.
Right.
So
yeah, that's what I mean. I'm a roof and stuff, that's fine, you know.
Well, yeah, or the sides, as long as the side of the building face.
Right.
The public road.
But I mean, another way to take care of that would be under your schedule or your chart of permitted material, right?
Well, yeah, we select what materials that we are okay with being on the front of the building or the sides facing the road. We select the materials that we want on those sides, and then we put a percentage on it.
Right.
That way they meet the percentage of using the materials that we want, and then they can go hardy for the rest of the way up or whatever.
When you bring like a franchising and they got their strict guidelines on how they have to do it.
Well, they have to meet building codes in towns anyway. I mean, you go to Gatlinburg, they have to meet what that looks like.
I just don't want to run that way, you know.
No, I don't think that. Obviously, some Lebanon, Gallatin, none of those places have run anything off with
And
these.
I've worked with in Portland. I worked with the Dunkin' Donuts on a really old corner lot that had like a foot on either side of the building within the building envelope. It was a super like difficult lot to work with. And Dunkin' Donuts worked with us on moving all their drive-through lines around. They worked with where the signage could face. They worked with putting some party board like decorative paneling to meet the building requirements. So, I mean, I've worked with franchises that will, within reason, work within your requeappointments.
And that's what we want.
Yeah.
Would that go before the Board of Zoning Appeals, or is that just part of the?
Well, if anybody appeals what.
If they'd like to do something different from what is required,
Yeah,
then they would have to go to the Board of Zoning.
And they'd have to show
I was just wondering,
what
in your case,
circumstances it's called.
in your case, they were willing to work that out before it ever got to.
Yeah,
to
it
this
had like
body.
3 things that went to the BZA just so that it could have a dumpster in the setback, and
Yeah,
it was a
yeah.
trouble.
I don't think
Lot.
this was, you hear when I showed the pictures of the trip I took? Yeah. So, I mean, that Taco Bell, it met all, I mean, it didn't even look like a Taco Bell. The only thing that looked like Taco Bell was their sign, Taco Bell. It was just a straight up rectangular stucco building that matched every other, the Walgreens right beside it and every other. You go to Hilton Head, South Carolina, It's the same way there. They determine what your outside of your building looks like. If the businesses wants to be there, then they abide. I don't think anything we've done or even discussed here would be near as restrictive as those places would be. I know Mount Juliet actually has some restrictions that are more than what we're looking at here. And that did cause some issues because they were so restrictive that the building had to be shaped a certain way. And they wouldn't give on that. And so they lost some businesses that way. They had to go to Lebanon. I was talking with Heather Bay about that.
Well, they can't get on it because they have pre-stamped cabinets and everything else has got to go in this shape of building, so.
And I think we all agree with you, Mitch. Last thing we want to do is deny a business, you know.
But as far as building materials, I think that's something that would not be a threshold that would, make it impossible for somebody to move here.
You know, the signs on the other hand, we do need to look at our sign policies and ordinance because the signs they're using today on the side of a lot of these buildings that we drive through in Gallatin 11, there's no way in heck they're going to meet our requirements. So
if I can just ask a couple of questions.
Sure.
And get just some idea of how we'd like to structure this going forward. So as far as you say, allowed materials, do we like the idea of having like primary materials and limited materials? Do we like the idea of facade materials and side and rear materials? Do we like the idea of materials based on zoning district? How would we like to kind of break that up?
I don't have an area to do a zoning district right now. We have enough area that we can break.
Well, what we're talking about is commercial. So like that could really wind up being anywhere. You could have some property right now that's A1, but you decide somebody wants to buy it from you, or you decide you want to put in some commercial business. It goes to the county court, gets rezoned, then they would have to meet the commercial standards that we've said.
Yeah, so this is an overlay where it's not based on geographically within the city where it is or within the county. This is just based on any industrial or commercial building that is built.
And obviously it would affect those areas already commercial.
And just for the recording of anyone who's watching, it would only affect existing buildings if they did a remodel of that increased their building more than 40%.
Right. Right.
So do we have any initial reactions to any of the structuring systems as far as what uses are allowed, where on the building or where within different zonings?
I like the wording of preferred wall materials.
Okay.
Myself,
And
more so than primary.
Instead of facade, I like the idea of what we were reading there of road fronting side.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that too.
Because if you're a corner building, then that would be those two sides versus just the front.
Right.
we need to determine the percentage as well.
Well, that's my second question. First, I just want to, how we want to break it up and then we can determine material,
You ask us as you're ready.
Okay,
You're the one doing the typing. So,
all right, so we like the idea of primary and secondary materials, that idea.
no,
Repeat what you said.
I said preferred.
Oh, preferred, sorry.
No, look, I just said that. If you guys got another opinion, speak up. I just like the verbiage of preferred better,
Preferred,
personally.
Sounds
limited.
less tyrannical.
Okay.
Because we prefer it, we're not telling you, we prefer these materials.
All right, and then you liked the idea of road frontage versus instead of facade.
Mhm.
Road facing, however.
Yeah.
It sounds better.
Okay. Okay, so then, do we like the idea of a list of materials? Do we like an idea of a table of materials? Do we like the idea of specifying like a type of material and then leaving it up to the planning commission to have a subjective view?
No,
Like a list?
I like the list.
A list of preferred and secondaries, I think is better.
Okay,
And then that covers us from, yeah, for limited, but that covers us from saying, you know, oh, you wouldn't let me use this. No, it's right here. We kind of go that route.
mhm. All right, would we like to include a list of prohibited materials? Or would we like to say all other materials are prohibited?
No, please.
List-
Yeah.
list of-
I think saying prohibited gets us in trouble.
Well, that's constantly changing, so you hate to prohibit something that, you know, all material prohibiting something come along and do. We get now material that.
Well,
Yeah, you're gonna have to update your stuff
well, then we can always
periodically.
go to the BZA, so.
Yeah,
um,
if something new came out,
If,
you know, when Hardy Board came out, that was, you know, pretty new.
if you leave it open-ended, I'll just put it this way.
You're gonna get the cheapest crowd.
I could find a way to get around it.
Yeah.
So
And I want you getting around.
I'll nail cocaine to the wall. So,
Yeah.
but we can do our preferred materials and then any other materials we can prohibit, and then if they don't like it, then go to VCA and ask for something different. Then they have to show this is what it's gonna look like, this is what we're asking for. So,
All right,
I wonder why Springfield left out wood where Gallatin has included it. I mean, what,
well, if you look at Springfield, I mean, they say this is a good example of what I was saying. The prohibited materials they put on here is plywood. So they
I can understand plywood, I meant
yeah,
wood
but
though.
they actually labeled it
Yeah,
because that probably became an issue.
yeah, I wouldn't
But
care much about a plywood one either, but
I mean, they're even saying wood shakes also, so
yeah,
I think wood shake's pretty good.
Yeah.
Seen
on a roof.
on a residential, yeah, but we're on a commercial, you're looking at maintenance efforts there.
it's a lot of money.
And so I think that's why it was being pursued there. Because you want something that's gonna be attractive, but it's gonna be low maintenance also.
Would you want to just, you know, just name these materials?
Well,
Or
hang
how do you want to do that?
okay, so first I want to talk about for preferred materials. Do we want to require a percentage of the total building? Do we want to require facades must be made only of primary materials? Do we want to
My personal opinion would be a percentage of a road, go back to of a road facing wall,
do we
if that's the
care
way you say it.
at all about the side or rear walls when it comes to preferred materials?
Not if it doesn't face a road.
Okay, so only for road facing.
All right. We're talking about road, you know,
That's what I would agree. And 70%.
Do we want 70% of all road facing walls to be a preferred material? Does that seem like a reasonable percentage?
what do you think, guys?
When you got windows and stuff,
Say that again?
when you got windows and stuff, that including those or excluding those.
I think it excludes
Yeah.
window and door openings. So it's all the walls, it's not glass or doors.
Just the square dimensions of that wall, 70% of it, and you do the exact square, ignore all the holes.
What do you think, guys?
They're using quite a lot to make.
Okay.
It might not be.
Well, it could be for a very large building. We say 70% and the food line has to be like their whole strip, because that all those dollar store, all those belong to food line.
It's brick anyway. I mean, it
Well,
already.
yeah, I was just using it as an example.
At the same time, it's got the metal across the top where all the signs are. So, I mean, that would still, I would think it's still meet the 70%, if it's like a brick as they have. And then.
As big a building as it is, I think Food Land
Yeah.
would probably qualify.
I think doing the 70%, being that Gallatin has it too, and looking at what the new buildings in Gallatin, being able to see the regulation in practice. I think it looks really nice. I don't think it's overbearing at 70%. And it still gives you I mean, if you're on a corner lot where you've got two road facing walls, so you can still put secondary stuff on the back to save your cost. And still be able to meet the standards that we're trying to set. But yeah,
For your meadows, if you have storage facilities on the main highway. And they're long ways, or where is that?
See, that's
All that brick all the way down through there, because most of them you see are
all metal.
That's because we've allowed that.
Unless you go to Gallatin, and if you'll go out past the Fairview there, those two big barns
Right.
that are on the north side, those are storage buildings.
They are.
They have, Sumner and Gallatin both have cut down on what they allow as far as storage buildings. As far as just outdoor.
To answer your question, Mitch, so just gonna have to look for the appropriate lot that has a very small amount of road frontage.
Yeah, I understand. So that way they only have to break the road fronting side or rock or whatnot, and then the metal can be down the sides, no problem. So if they lay them in there long ways, kind of like with the way Sloan's building is right now. Where just the ends of his buildings, of his storage buildings, face the road. He doesn't have to do anything down the side, and he only has to do 70% of the road face.
But you go out here on your earth and you have to do every one of them, pretty much.
But he would be grandfathered in.
Yeah, but I'm just saying if something new.
If someone came in that situation where you've got road on both sides, yeah, that's what we're saying.
And if it limits more of that was coming in, then those that are existing just have that much more business.
You charge them, there's more.
How many can you stand? How many people got that much junk?
Evidently. Gets 8 or 10 phone calls a day.
I'm just saying, I mean, that's a business that had just flabbergasted me.
Any more questions, Keelan?
Well, so.
We hadn't set on a percent. We haven't agreed on a percent.
Right, so currently, the idea that we have is 70 or something around there % of all road facing walls must be made of a preferred material. 30% or whatever the opposite of whatever we decide, of the road facing wall may be made of a limited material, and all of the rear and side walls may be made of a limited material.
Right.
Okay. So 70-30, battle it out. What do you guys want?
I'm good with 70. I agree with David. I think 70 is good. I think it gives us a consistent look and stuff, and I don't think it'll drive out anybody that wants to come here. It hasn't in Gallatin or, I mean, they're building all the time.
I'd be interested if anyone else had another idea.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, I agree with David. Y'all speak up.
I said, I think 70 is a lot.
Would you propose 60-40?
It might me feel bad.
Okay.
So what was the 40%? Sorry.
It would either, we're debating between 70% preferred and 30% limited, or 60% preferred, 40%.
You got a big building. We have enough, which if we have a newer strip mall, sure they would want to be in the front of it anyways.
An airstrip.
No, a strip mall, if we have like a new strip mall or something come, you'd think the front, but depends on how bad deep it goes, I guess.
Well, the 70% we're talking about is just on the road facing.
Yeah,
side.
just
If it's on one part,
You would have, yeah, you'd have both. But now, and see, I guess that's another question that we need to discuss. So like, and not picking on Foodland, but it's just a good example of that building where it sits. Technically, the lot does face both roads, but would that side facing Broadway be considered? I mean, that would be a road fronting side, would it not?
You talking about the
see, I think.
See, yeah, there's buildings between it and the road.
Yeah, I wouldn't consider it that, but I think that's an example of where the builder could go to the BZA and get an exception for that.
Wouldn't a whole lot of this have to do with where your entrances are? If you went into the side of Foodland, we'd be looking at it different, but we just go in the front by the parking lots anywhere. So in my mind, that's what I'm visualizing. When we build a new building, new commercial building, I'm looking at 70% of where we're going.
And let's face it, most new construction of commercial property on most new lots are gonna be facing the highway. I mean, we just don't have that many other side roads or anything, you know, that's ever gonna be built there.
What would be the percentage off the top of your head of the new dollar store out in his neighborhood of the front?
Well, you'd have to take in 2%.
Yeah, I would say.
Maybe a 1%,
And it would be
2%.
two sides of that, because you'd have two road facing sides.
But the way it is
Well-
now, what would you say that percentage is of
Well, the
that?
back's on, the two backs, the back and the side is all metal, so that, just the front,
Just the front?
It's about
up,
5 feet
up just the front,
Uh-huh.
I'd say
about 5 feet up.
10%. I think it'd be 10% of just that one
Right,
front
that's all I'm
side.
talking about, how that looks, how you're visualizing that.
I'd be
You're
shocked
saying
if it's
about
10%.
10%.
If we said 60, then it would,
50, 60 is a lot compared to that.
if we said 60, you would put the brick above the awning entryway. So. 60-40. Yeah, I like 60-40 because they don't go 50% out and then go 50% with something else. It sets it up a little bit, yeah.
And seeing my thought of doing the 70, it gets you to the top of the windows. So you've got a clean transition there to the other. Or.
That's what I was thinking of, get to the top of the windows and then with the,
Case like Foodland, where you've got the actual wall, and then you have the off, you know, the awning there that comes out and then goes up. Well, they've met the 70 with the brick across the interior there, and then their 30 is the metal across the top. So you still have a 70-30 there.
Well, we do also, perhaps we could include an additional requirement, like Portland has, primary facade materials shall not change at outside corners. Facade materials only change along a horizontal line at an inside corner or outside corners where the material wraps the corner by a minimum of 2 feet. So that's some requirements for where it can change material. We wanted to require that as well. That's for. If it's a 3-story building, if it's maximum 35 and we required 60%, that's 2 stories. And then final 40%-ish would be about the 3rd story in the roof.
Kayla, what do you know off the top of your head, what most places percentage they have? Or is it just different everywhere?
I can tell you it's different everywhere. I mean, not Sumner County. Springfield has 25% of, well, they have 75% of the entire building.
Right.
And then 25% of side and rear walls, maybe limited material. Portland does not require, they only require that you use 2. Wilson County has. No. Gallatin has 70%. Yeah. So it looks like it's around that 70-75% for those more strict ones, but
I just wondered, I didn't know.
And I think the difference between, instead of telling them that it's got to be, you know, 60-40 of the whole building, we're only asking for the road frontage of a building, which then ends up being much less of a percentage of the whole building. You're just specifying, like I said, you're putting the money where you get the most benefit from.
You're specifying the visual part of the building.
Exactly. Where you could be 25% all the way around, well, you take 25 off the back and 25 off the side, now you got 50 on the front, and they spent the same amount of money. But it's more of an impact to the driver.
Where I started thinking about this, guys, I don't know if you were here, Mitch, then was, you know, when Dollar General came and was going to go in, I just assumed that it would look like the Dollar General on Highway 231 going to Lebanon. It's like 70% brick and Castaic Springs, and it's just all metal except for that little bit strip on the front, you know. And that's my fault for assuming, because they went by our rules that were existing. That's kind of where we got to this, you know. They didn't do anything wrong. We just didn't have anything to
What kind of dollar difference are we talking? 50 or 60% versus 70%?
I mean, just based on materials these days. It depends on which one you're asking about, but. Finals, so, well, I was gonna say finals a lot cheaper, but it just went up.
I mean, I know it depends on the size of the building.
It could, a 10% difference.
Mhm.
I mean, depends on the size of the building, it could be substantial, but if it's a huge building.
If you're
If
having,
it's a Walmart, they wouldn't care.
if you're having a business coming in, putting a 15,000-20,000 square foot building in, do you really want them using the cheapest materials to do the building for longevity?
I personally like the 60/40, it sets it off enough, to where, there is it's not transitioning right in the middle, but it's a little off. But
I won't go home mad with 70-30, but I'm okay with 60-40.
Do we want to do a vote?
Thomas,
Everybody?
well,
I like to see.
I think at the end of the day, when they do their planning and they see that the brick's gonna end 6 inches below the window, they're just gonna go 6 more inches up and just say, and be done with it. It's gonna be harder on them anyways to finish and do that transition in a window. So.
And this is a minimum requirement we're discussing anyway, not a maximum. They want to
break the whole thing.
Or they'll break around the window.
Yeah.
So you'll have your line of brick and then they'll go around the windows with the brick. So they don't have to do that transition between materials.
And we're just gonna, this is a recommendation. The county court will make the final decision.
I like 60-40.
Well, everybody 60-40, raise your hand. Everybody 70-30. So it's close, but 60, but wins by 1 vote.
All right.
And again, it's got to go through David's committee and then it have to go through the commission. I've got a feeling there's going to be a whole lot more discussion.
I'll bring a 60-40 for you guys to look at next time.
The point being, the only county commissioners here are on the losing side.
All right. So now the fun stuff. So as far as preferred materials, brick,
Obviously.
brick, stone,
Party board.
stone, party board.
She's going to mention some if anybody has an objection with
Architectural panel.
I think that's what that's referring to is either like a tin patterned panel or like.
I think that's what's admitted more now underneath the window across the bottom. So it's a panel that they put in, but it looks like stone.
Okay. Well, there's also architectural metal, which is a material I've come across in the past. That's
like a stamped tin or copper.
A stamped tin or a copper, or there's like, it's not metal like pole barn siding, but it's like industrial kind of.
I'm good with leaving that one out.
If we're talking about preferred materials and
Sure,
secondary materials.
This couple here has been here all day. I don't know if they got something before we go any farther.
They weren't on the agenda. Y'all have something that y'all are here for, guys?
David was working on something for me.
Oh, okay.
That's the conversation about the grass.
Is that on our agenda?
It is, it's not, it's just gonna be part of the discussion coming out of that committee.
These people could be sitting here all night.
Yes.
That's the next bullet point on the codes of zoning discussion.
Well,
I just want to run through, I promise you.
let's do a few because, we're getting kind of late in the day.
And this is my last question for you. So just let's throw a couple of materials on this preferred and limited list and prohibited list.
So let's stay away from paneling because unless you do paneling right, it's wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have brick, stone, hardy board. I of course am in the way. Faux stone.
What is that? That's that fake stone.
It's the air stone.
I'm okay.
The fade resistant, specifying that.
Yeah, I think,
Okay.
yeah.
Fade resistance. That's out of Gallatin, right?
Springfield.
Fade resistant.
They say fade resistant artificial stone is the way they have it worded right here.
Stone, and do we like quick brick?
I'm not sure what it is, but as long as it's fade resistant, I think
I think it's that, those panels that look like bricks, they're like,
Oh, like the stamp.
yeah, they're like stuck out panels and you can, they're almost like split face blocks, but they're intended to look like bricks, not blocks.
Oh, yeah,
Is that, I feel like that's what that is.
we've never used it. I see what I was there.
All these new things, when you start looking at this, because I see like an architectural panel here.
That is a really good idea.
what you say.
I can definitely have some, I can put some photos of what these materials are
Okay.
for next time.
Yeah.
Okay. Have photos. Okay. Okay, so I have a general idea for the preferred, that makes sense. For limited limited materials. How do we feel about stucco? Is that preferred? Is that limited? Is it prohibited at all?
I like stucco.
Yeah, I like stucco.
Stucco is preferred, maybe? So split face block, that is looks like cinder blocks, but isn't.
Right. Well, it's got that
Yeah,
design on.
it's stamp block, and I think it looks decent. They're doing on a lot of houses right now. Instead of doing just the flat block, they do the split face block.
That's the one I do on the base, got the texture to it.
Yeah.
Do we like that as preferred for the 60%, or do we like that as limited 40%?
I thought we limited.
Okay, split. All right, split face block, concrete is included with the split face block. Do we also like that as limited?
Actually, I think the Target you mentioned earlier, Kmart, whatever it was, I think they're doing a split face block.
Are they?
Yeah.
Concrete?
And concrete and stucco are really the same appearance for the most part.
As long as it's just not the flat.
Yeah.
Right.
We're not talking about just the flat concrete.
Yeah.
Okay, so like
Textured
textured concrete. I
Well,
can
the
look.
way Springfield has it listed is concrete or split face block. I don't know.
I can look up examples and
Okay.
we can
Okay.
narrow it down. How do we feel about, well, I don't really know what an EIFS is. You know what a exterior insulation finishing system is?
See, Springfield has that cementitious siding is part of, it's hardy board. They got hardy ore. So that's what I was thinking. That is just the same thing as hardy board. Under Spring, see right here where Springfield has it.
So is that like the foam siding they put up and then they spray concrete over it, Sam? I mean, because technically that'd be kind of a stucco look too, so.
It used to be a layered system, with stucco on it.
And if we have general ideas, I can bring photos of all of these things for us to look at next time.
Why don't you do that? And then any other kind of material that you can think of that we need to do. And
Okay, I can definitely do that. Finally, do we have any specific materials that we absolutely would like to prohibit?
well, unsurfaced or unpainted concrete block, I think.
Yeah.
Plywood. And just an asphalt shingled wall. I don't think anybody wants to see an asphalt shingled wall. What about aluminum?
Oh, slow down. Sorry.
I'm just going by the list here at Portland.
All right, we said metal. We said
Aluminum.
vinyl. We said asphalt shingles.
Does everybody look at the list there under Springfield? Does everybody agree with that list? And then she just, I think we all agree with that list right here, Keelan. Oh, it's but here and then.
I don't know about y'all, but I would not want asphalt shingles on wall material.
That's what we just said.
Yeah, that's in prohibited.
Yeah, I think you can just copy the Springfield list there.
Same as Springfield. Cool. All right, I can definitely, that gives me a lot to put together for next time, and I'll definitely make sure that we have photos accompanying the next discussion about materials. Anything else that we would like me to bring forward before you guys for the next
I think
time?
you got enough.
It is a lot. I've been trying to get ahead on it.
Okay. Well, let's catch up on that. And then,
Okay.
David, would you like to?
Yeah.
Whatever.
So, codes and zoning, it was, a discussion was brought up by, from here to, on large properties out in the county, there's gonna be subdivisions. And I think a lot of people are looking at subdivisions and they're thinking, you know, acre or smaller houses all grouped together, that's a subdivision. And they're realizing once they've bought 5 or 6 acres, that they still fall under the same regulations for subdivisions because that property was subdivided off a larger property. And now they meet all the maintenance requirements of the subdivision. And the discussion was had at Codes and Zoning. And I apologize, I don't have copies of that with me right now. I'll make sure that we bring a copy for everyone to look at. Healy, I believe I emailed you a copy of his proposal to look at. If not, I'll get you that copy. And really what I wanted to do, it was discussed in Codes and Zoning. We saw a need to actually have further discussion on it, so I wanted to bring for planning. He's looking at on a 5-acre lot, it's R1, and it would only be on residential large lots, larger than 5 acres or more. Instead of having to maintain the whole 5 acres, just having to maintain a 25-foot strip around the property bordering the other, other residentials, so that there wasn't an overburden on maintaining the whole property on lots that are undeveloped. And that was the discussion. It was on undeveloped lots. So a person just bought an empty lot beside them and having to maintain that lot along with, another lot or,
You said this is on lots of more than 5 acres.
5 acres was proposed. I'd be curious to hear any comments from this body of if they see a need for that, or if they like the ordinance the way it sits, that, everything has to be mowed in a subdivision less than a foot high. Because at the current one, you can't let your grass grow over a foot tall in a subdivision of R1.
So you're saying the property is 5 acres and it's zoned R1?
Yes.
So you're asking, do they need to mow the house?
Do we need to amend our existing to allow them just a 25-foot buffer strip around that they have to maintain instead of having to maintain the whole property?
And there's people that live in lots next to them?
Yes.
So can I add, so when you're doing a subdivision, if you have a lot that's greater than 5 acres, it's typically not considered a lot within that subdivision because it's, unless it's like a remainder, but even so, it's not considered a lot. So they already are not required when we do our subdivisions. What are you showing me?
That's his lot. I found your proposal.
Okay.
So I'm just curious, because those 5-acre lots are not subject to the subdivision regulations already.
And we need clarification.
Okay.
For codes enforcement purposes on that, because it is being enforced at this point.
Okay, well, and that's, mowing is more of a building maintenance than it is a zoning issue. So that may just be related more to residential lots or something like that. Maybe not less tied to size. That would be my only thing is that 5 acre just hits that threshold of what's considered a lot in the TCA zoning or planning laws. So technically they're not considered lots, which is how you could possibly get a.
At this point in the county, we have several R1 large lots that aren't necessarily, they've got cattle on them or whatnot, using them for agricultural purposes. And they're using for hay fields and whatnot still. Grass is growing.
It's hard to cut hay if you got it only a foot tall.
Well, that's. Like I said, I was just wondering, is that something that, you know, you guys would be interested in codes and zoning looking further into that? Or is it a dead issue? And
Well, if according to Keelan, I mean, it's not even considered a lot anyway.
I would say it
Well,
sounds
by the
like a
state.
wording issue.
So if all,
Why do you even wanna mow the 25 foot? What does that even matter? I mean, would he even have to mow any of it?
so the state has laws on
Somebody
that.
won't mow it out.
So the state has laws on the 1 foot limit to protect other property owners inside of a subdivision from like rats, moles, groundhogs, snakes, that stuff.
I mow my yard good and I got all kind of mowers.
They mow it to their boundary, that's
Mm.
on them after that. I mean, he shouldn't have to mow his, if he don't want to, in my opinion.
Well, we're talking about a residential neighborhood too, though. We're not talking about just a,
So the proposal is to put a limit. So if it's over 3 acres or 5 acres, depending on what y'all choose. Let me see what it says here. Initially 3 acre lots, but about 5 acres might be.
if it's 5 acres or more, I don't.
I don't think I got a copy of this. I'm sorry.
The amendment would be for lots 5 acres or more outside of the city limits. Any lot that is 5 acres or more and borders a lot less than 5 acres that falls under the maintenance regulations must give that similar lot a 25-foot setback of maintenance, grass, and weeds.
And I think the purpose of that 25 is you're talking about, it still gives the nature of the rule so that you're keeping rodents and whatnot back from your neighbor's property.
Right, there's an intent to give some type of buffer on your property for the existing neighbors. So that's, you're not letting grass, weeds, whatever, grow right up onto there or even over the property line. Because it's more of a good faith thing than it is, you know, it's
More of what? I'm sorry. I
a
didn't.
good faith gesture.
Okay, okay. I just didn't hear
Well,
what you
that's
said.
your agricultural would be apply to. And see, that's the thing, you can have agricultural backing right up to a residential in the subdivision. Agricultural doesn't have to do a thing. They can let it grow, trees grow back on it, no big deal. But if that zone and still an empty lot residential, it's got to be maintained. So this is kind of a compromise for large properties that are R1.
Yes and no. I made the example at the meeting that you could take a 60-acre farm, which we have several of, and you cut 1 acre off of it for that house to separate the farm from it. That 1 acre has to be cut consistently. It cannot, or let's just say it's a 3 acre lot. It still cannot, that lot cannot be considered agriculture. It's zoned agriculture. It cannot be considered as a part of the farm. So they can't leave the back 2 acres as farm.
And this amendment only applies to non-developed land, so we wouldn't have a house on it. So, and that's the point.
Mm-hmm.
It's as if the way we have things set now, we're unduly putting a burden on undeveloped property just because it's R1 that we don't put on anything else.
Are we only discussing R1 or we?
Yes.
Okay.
Sounds like a pretty good amendment to me.
I would hate to see someone have to keep it mowed just because it's R1. However, when you buy the zone.
I can argue either side of it. I do like the proposal, but I mean, look at Bridle Path. There's about, if I was to make a guess, there's about 4 or 5 acres there on the left. When you get past the first couple of houses, it stays grown up all the time, and I have to send him a letter almost every month during the summer to get him to mow it. If it's undeveloped land at that point, and we got to be careful.
That's the hard thing about being undeveloped.
But I think those people, like using Bridle Path for an example, I think those people that live in that subdivision have a right, have a.
Are there houses next to this property?
Yeah.
Yes. But like I said, when you do the 5 acre, 5 acres and above that are residential, I think that makes a huge difference.
It does.
Because you're not gonna have I haven't seen anything that comes through that puts a 5 acre residential, in the middle. I mean, we have had some subdivisions that have come through and they're, you've got a couple that are 3, you've got 8, you've got, I think, the one we just did on, well, even for Bass here, you've got some large parcels on that. You're still in an agricultural field out in the county. If it's undeveloped, I can see the, like I said, it's Sam. I can see it both ways. I guess it's really, what are we as a county trying to achieve by the way the ordinance is set now? And
5 acres is a lot to mow with a lawnmower. I mean, isn't it? Why?
Yes, ma'am.
Can we just hear from him
Sure,
and what his item?
sure. Sir?
So like stated before, as well as with these lots, there are they're in my proposal specific outside of the city limits, so it's rural county. They are able to and largely used agriculturally, and you're allowed most cows, horses, chickens in a non-commercial aspect. The ordinances are not enforced unless a complaint is put in.
Right.
So in my instance, when I received a letter, you literally have to drive by in my subdivision, multiple infractions to the letter, just like, so that's to me, that's a tricky point, is because of the enforcement. And listen to the subcommittee meeting, I would dare say there's a burden on Sam and his office to follow these up, the time, the money involved for the county, and then reaches a certain point, it's about to go to court and whatnot, and then it's, in this instance, the grass is cut, so it all starts over again. I know there was a concern about ag land, and my proposal was not intended to impose any restriction or impose a great burden, especially on A1. To me, it was a relaxing effort on landowners to better utilize or have more freedom to do as they wish, whether it became they wanted sections of it to grow up to forestation, or if in that instance I was growing a 3/4 acre wildlife garden. It may be food plot might be more, but I didn't hunt this particular one, but I grew it up for birds, pollinators, just whatever one wanted to use it. And that's what basically cited the complaint to me. And that's kind of why I brought this proposal, just to give more leeway for the landowner to utilize their property more to their benefit, or just as they wish, with the setback. And the 25-foot setback, what I proposed is up for discussion, be 30, 50 feet. It's just something that says, I see your lot here, you've got a house, you've got a property. I'll give you some setback maintenance, so there's less chance, or there's no chance of these rodents or whatever that congregate in the country where I'm at. Doesn't matter what you do. It's got possible coyotes. I mean, they're in my backyard daily. So, but that's the gist and the point.
Your proposal was the 25 foot.
Yes.
Isn't that what you're proposing?
That's what I'm just bringing on 5 and above.
So his proposal meets what?
That was what I.
Okay.
I proposed that.
Email me his, very well written. I just wanted to pass it on forward just for discussion at this.
That's what I was agreeing with.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, and to go further into it, like, I wanted to start at 3 acres, but I felt like 5 acres was more likely to be received well. Some of these R1 lots I've seen some 11 acres, 10 of them being open. So that's 10 acres of maintenance ordinance, you know, possibly cause issues. Like I said, you buy the property, but I dare say most people have no idea that type of restriction exists on a large lot. Just listen to the subcommittee meeting, and it seemed like one or two may have been like, you know, I either didn't know, or it's like, you're in this country, why is this being encouraged?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wouldn't have known. I attended their meeting last week. That's how I found out about it.
So in other words, we're saying 25 feet strip around the property line.
That's what I'm saying.
That's what's being proposed. Like I said, I would rather bring it up as, you know, just a discussion of what came out of our
That's very fair.
just to find out where this body stood, so that I could then take it back and we can actually turn it into an ordinance for codes and zoning to look at officially and bring it here as a official ordinance coming forward. And
He's out in the county.
Yes.
And just to expand on that property line maintenance, the maintenance zone would, the way I proposed it, would only be enforced if it touched a lot 5 acres. So any boundary line that touched a lot 5 acres or less is where that maintenance level would come. Or and I needed to add a road right of way as well to for visual purposes for the road.
I think you've done a good job.
So for anyone who is possibly against this amendment, I'd love to hear, like I said, so I can take back to my committee, what the objections or what you think should be changed differently. Whether you think they should be no 25 foot or should be more. I really would like to hear the discussion.
Well, again, we're talking about.
Look at some of those that Dr. Fair and some of them are well, probably way over 5 acres. You know, and you're gonna. It's undeveloped. I don't see why.
What are you talking about? You talking about this?
Yeah,
But they're going to be developed.
Well, back now, I don't see where that.
Probably 2 or 3 years.
Yeah,
It'll grow up.
So
I don't see where he's.
So are you saying it's okay with you if I bought this track right here and somebody owns these other 2 on the side of me, they just let it grow up?
It's less than 5 acres, Tony. Those are 1 acre.
So those would have to.
You agree?
I'm just using that as an example.
Yeah, but.
No, I agree. 5 acres is fine. I don't have a problem with that.
Because
And again, we're talking about residentially zoned property. We're not talking about agriculture.
He should. The 25 feet.
I agree with him.
Well, I think if you've got some land in a residential neighborhood, I think you owe your neighbors some maintenance there. That's why his compromise is that he's the one offering the compromise, is that 25-foot barrier.
Don't we have setbacks though?
For buildings and stuff, not for we don't for mowing.
They know they're.
This kind of goes along with that, is it gives you a setback for yard maintenance.
And Mr. Chairman, so for right now, okay, so we approved this subdivision on the final reading. It's a subdivision out in the county. According to our current regulations, if that builder does not build anything on that for a year, he's still responsible to make sure the grass on every one of those lots doesn't get above a foot.
Yeah, see, that's he ought to be able to go in there and bush hog it or something and keep it.
Hey.
Gotta be under a foot. It's a subdivision.
Well, that's what he's saying.
That's why I thought it was worth bringing the codes.
That's what he's saying, Thomas, that he wouldn't have to.
He said he doesn't have to.
The current law in Trousdale County, you have to.
In other words, if you leave it like it is now, you would have to mow it.
We're trying to fix it.
Trying to change it so you don't.
He's saying change it and don't even include 25 foot. Just change it altogether that there's no regulation. If he wants to grow up to cut hay off of it, he can grow up to his property line.
Well, nobody said he can't cut hay, but does he not owe his neighbor?
Because it's residential R1 versus A1.
Yeah, that's.
We're not talking about agriculture. We're talking about a residential. You know,
I agree. I think the compromise is a good solution because it's still you're an R1. You know, you bought land next to it. You had R1. You didn't expect them to have a hay field or cows or anything on it. There's an expectation you're R1,
right.
R1, some sort of of compromise there, I think is reasonable.
No, this does,
That's why we're.
I think it makes a
put it on the
difference if
agenda.
there's ponds on each side of it.
no, this
I
doesn't
think
include,
that makes a difference.
this doesn't include farms that are zoned R1. We've got
Right.
several that are 60-acre farms that are R1, the entire farm. It doesn't include those because they farm it, it's agriculture.
The use is different.
they're-
These are used-
They're approved by the state as ag exempt, so.
Well, I mean, more people that are coming in from outside are having smaller farms, you know, that's what they're moving here. 5 acres to have, so they can have their horse, so they can have their cow, that they can't have wherever else, you know.
Then they'll have to have it rezoned agricultural.
Yeah, because they can't do that in, you just can't buy 5 acres and stick a horse out there.
Not supposed to, but.
Yeah. Leslie,
I would be interested in Glenn researching this and your opinion on this.
what other areas do?
Yes, I would just be interested in your opinion.
They have a 1-foot limit.
Yeah, and I would say that property maintenance is not often dictated in the zoning ordinance or subdivision regulations. This is generally a building and codes and a property maintenance thing, which would not be in the zoning ordinance and would not be my realm.
It falls in titles.
Yeah. My only kind of contribution thing would just be to say, be wary of the use of the 5-acre and subdivision. Just be conscious of that terminology, because when we say 5-acre lot, when we're subdividing 5-acre lots, they're not really lots. And it gets confusing. So, or just be conscious of making sure that that language is very clear about use and like residential lots and that sort of idea.
And if we can do that and be consistent across the board, then I don't see the reason for the amendment. Otherwise, I think we need to do that. So I think there's 2 different avenues, and I think it's something that we need to continue discussing. To come up with some sort of consensus to put forward of how we're going to approach that.
Keelan can run it by her team and I'll support it to Brandon to see if we're even allowed to change it.
Because I guess I mentioned earlier, as we're doing more and more R1s in Trousdale County, we're converting from agricultural to residential. We're putting more people on top of each other. You're gonna have more friction, and without the regulations in place, you're gonna have problems.
Yeah.
Just neighbor on neighbor.
And I like saying, Keelan can offer it to her team, which represents a lot of surrounding areas, and come back with some more. I mean, we're not gonna make a decision tonight anyway.
No.
We're still in the fact gathering stage.
I know.
Would you mind sending me that?
I'll send it to you.
That
Okay, right here.
document?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for working with it, and I think you've got a very common sense solution that you offered, and please come back and you know, give us some more insight. Don't just sit over. If you got something to say, you know. Yeah. Guys, it's almost 10 o'clock. Do I have a motion to adjourn? We're done.